Disney World is trying to trick you, and it's probably working. The first way they trick you? With sound. Disney World is loud, but that's not an accident or uncontrolled chaos. For a place like Disney World, silence is actually dangerous. Silence lets individual sounds separate themselves from the environment. Machinery powering on, backstage doors slamming, vehicles moving, cast members talking, infrastructure doing its job. But once those sounds surface on their own, the illusion starts to break, or maybe it actually even shatters. Sensitive content warning: Disney World isn't built on magic. It's built on infrastructure. The park sits on power systems, utility corridors, service roads, mechanical rooms, and constant operations that never stop. What does stop is the sound of all of that infrastructure from reaching your ears. That's why the park is filled with continuous background sound, not necessarily to entertain you every second, but to keep other sounds from getting to you. The soundscape of Main Street isn't just a playlist, it functions as an intentional layer of broadband sound masking. In acoustic engineering, this involves using a continuous, steady background sound to raise the noise floor of an environment. By keeping this background layer constant, Imagineers ensure that the ambient audio outperforms or stands above, comes forward from, the low frequency clatter of the real-world infrastructure. This prevents your brain from being able to isolate and focus on the wrong sounds or the sounds they don't want you to hear, like mechanical rooms or service vehicles, effectively burying the noise of the park's operation under a thick tapestry of curated audio. And this approach isn't new. It wasn't even new in 1971 with Magic Kingdom or Disney World. It was present from the very beginning of Disney park design. When Disneyland opened in 1955, Walt Disney and the original Imagineers didn't treat sound as incidental. Music and ambient audio were planned alongside walkways, sightlines, and attractions. Walt described the park as a show, not a civic space. And in a show, sound is just as important as lighting and staging. But don't take my word for it. David Farmer is one of the most prolific sound designers working today. He's responsible for the soundscapes for such films as the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbit movies. He designed Ant-Man. He even designed Avengers Endgame. My personal favorite film that he sound designed is Dumb and Dumber. And if you want to know why, I recommend that you watch it again and listen closely to the sound design and guess. Anyway, David, over to you.
I'm Dave Farmer. I do sound design for films. I've done The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbits, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, stuff like that. So I really appreciate the sound design, or at least the presence of sound in the Disney parks, as someone who makes a living making sounds for entertainment purposes. Disney parks are like an immersive surround sound movie that you're starring in, and it never stops. And it's seamless. The transitions are seamless. What's so great about the parks is the sound design is so good and it's so well thought out, it just disappears. That's what happens when you do it right. There is no accidental sound in the parks. Every little cricket you hear, every little vignette, like the dentist drill off Main Street, every single thing you hear is on purpose and strategically designed. The music is designed to cover up the sound of the crowds. It's designed to put you in the right environment depending on which land you're in. And it's also meant to hide the fact that you're in this giant crowd of people. One little cool thing I like is in Toontown, the fountains aren't allowed to be just water. They're filled with gizmos and gadgets and bloops and bleeps and things like that. All of this just adds to the world and immerses you further. As a sound designer, I'm almost constantly recording sounds. And there's so many cool sounds in the park. The sounds of the roller coasters, the sounds of the fountains, just about everything makes cool sounds. But I'm telling you, it is really hard to find a way to record without music. And I'm sure everybody at AllEars can attest to that. When you move from one land to the other, the transitions are seamless. This is like forced perspective for your ears. Most of the ambient sounds and the music in the parks are looped, but the beauty of it is it's looped so well that you don't even notice it. And even if you're hanging out in an area long enough to notice the loop, you don't care. That's how well thought out it is. There are also ambient sounds too. Just go through Animal Kingdom. It's filled with fake ambient sounds of crickets and birds and bugs. Every sound you hear, whether it's music or ambiences, is meant to either move you along or make you feel comfortable where you are. I think Galaxy's Edge has learned from everything that every other land has taught Disney over the years. The ambient sounds in there, so immersive and so perfect. You really feel like you're on another planet. I mean, that's immersion done right.
Thanks, David. Now let's talk about smell. Smell isn't used in Walt Disney World to cover something up. It's used to trick you into believing you're somewhere else. Central Florida itself has a smell. Heat, humidity, asphalt, standing water, vegetation, it's constant, and if Disney left it alone, you'd smell it everywhere. So they don't. Instead, Disney introduces new smells, ones they want you to believe are being produced naturally by the environment around you. I'm standing here in front of the Main Street Confectionery, home to probably the most iconic smell in Disney World, and this one goes all the way back to Disneyland. The vanilla smell pumped out of the Main Street Confectionery hits you before you've even looked at the castle yet. Well, you've probably looked at it, but you haven't gotten up close. Disney is setting the emotional tone before you've even decided how this place feels. I mean, when Mary Poppins and Bert walk by, it obviously feels very, very good, but the vanilla smell helps. And is that a seagull? What's going on? That works because smell doesn't behave like your other senses. You don't think your way through a smell. It hits first and makes sense later. Smell goes straight to the part of your brain that handles emotion and memory, which is why it can instantly make you feel safe, nostalgic, or hungry without you knowing why. It's a shortcut, and Disney uses it a lot. Disney began formally developing and patenting scent delivery systems in the late 1970s and early 80s. When an entire space needs to smell a certain way, standard scent machines are used to spread fragrance evenly throughout the air. But Disney's Smellitizer was designed for a more specific job, delivering short, precise bursts of scent directly to guests, timed exactly to what they're seeing. For attractions where scent needs to hit you and then disappear like Soarin' Around the World, Disney uses compressed air pushed through dry scent media, often described as scent beads. The air picks up the smell and blows it towards you at just the right moment, then clears quickly. Beads are often preferred because they're cleaner to work with and don't leave scent hanging around longer than it's supposed to. In Soarin' Around the World, every location is reinforced with smell. Grass over the African savanna, florals at the Taj Mahal, ocean air over Fiji. Your brain accepts those smells as proof that you're actually there, even though you're still in Florida. In Avatar Flight of Passage, the same trick is used to sell an invented place. Damp earth, alien vegetation, and water all work together to convince you that Pandora is real, physical, and alive, not a set or screen. I recently had an experience while writing Tower of Terror, something I've written since 1994, where I saw in scene 4, the scene where the two ghost children are kind of in the in-between crawl space, there was a blast of air and I smelled something gross. And I went and asked a cast member afterwards, I said, did they add smell to this part of the ride, or am I smelling just the age of the ride? And they said, no, they just replaced the scent and it's very strong now. And that amazed me because I've never smelled it before. And then they said there's one other place on property where you can smell it, and they said it's the engine room in Restaurantosaurus, which is sadly closing in like a day. Speaking of this story, this story connected me with someone really amazing that, you know, he's a specialist in the scent world, especially in the theme park scent world. Liam R. Finlay is a theme park and museum smell specialist and a themed attraction designer who studies how scent is used to shape space, memory, and emotion. He's literally writing a book about this. Liam saw the social media post that we did on All Ears about this new smell experience, and he actually reached out to me on Instagram, and now we're friends through the internet. He's writing about my experience with Tower of Terror in his book, and he's here with us right now today. Hi, Liam.
Thanks, Breedlove. One of the earliest examples of scent used in a theme park was in 1975 at Knott's Berry Farm for the Knott's Berry Tales Dark Ride, and for this, designer Rolly Crump had been inspired by the pine-scented aerosol diffusers in Knott's Timber Mountain log ride. And Rolly actually told me that when he'd been on the log ride, he smelt the pine and he thought it was from real pine trees. After the opening of Pirates of the Caribbean, Rolly Crump and John Hench had wanted to add a smoky smell to the burning town scene, and there were actually some experiments for this. However, the idea was shot down by the fire department and management because of concerns that the smell would spread too far around the building, and you can just imagine if the smoky smell had drifted into the restaurant. Excitingly, during a 2015 refurbishment of Pirates of the Caribbean at Magic Kingdom, smells were added to the ride, including a smoky smell in the burning town scene. And modern fan machines with scent beads allowed for careful control over the smells. And I love this as an example of how changing technology can allow us to use tricks that failed in the past. Back to you, Breedlove.
Thanks, Liam. Now let's talk about color. It starts the moment you enter Magic Kingdom. When you walk under the train tracks right there, the tunnel creates a moment of physical and acoustic compression. For a few seconds, your sensory input is narrowed by the low ceilings and the shade. When you step out onto Main Street USA, the sudden transition into the open air and bright light makes the colors feel more vivid and the space feel significantly grander through a natural optical phenomenon called successive contrast. They used a transitional space to reset your brain's baseline so the reveal would be more dramatic. Once your brain is primed, Disney tells your eyes what to skip. Colors like go-away green and blending blue are proprietary hues developed to be visually recessive. In color theory, cool, desaturated tones like these lack the high contrast demand that warm or saturated colors place on your vision. By matching the average visual noise of Florida foliage, a dull mix of moss, shadow, and neutral grays, Disney creates a non-story for your brain. When you see these colors, your eyes automatically label them as background and move on to the next high contrast focal point without you realizing a choice was made. And they even manipulate the ground you're walking on. In the 1960s, Disney worked with Kodak to determine what the best surface for taking pictures would be. They determined that the gray concrete was too reflective and harsh for both picture taking and guest comfort, so they developed this sort of pinkish or red toned concrete, which is optimal for taking pictures and for the guests' very own eyes. Red and green are complementary colors, and by placing this pinkish or red tone against the park's landscaping, Disney makes the grass look greener and the sky look more blue through simultaneous contrast. By upgrading nature's saturation, Disney further downgrades everything painted go-away green or bye-bye blue. Your eyes skip the infrastructure because the environment feels richer, and it is. And that brings us to scale. On Main Street USA, the buildings follow a specific diminishing scale which manipulates your perceived distance. While the first floors are built to a standard 1:1 scale to accommodate guests, the second floors are constructed at 5/8 scale, and the third floors are reduced further to 1/2 scale. Your brain assumes the windows and architectural details are standard size concluding that the buildings must be taller and further away than they physically are. Cinderella Castle uses a sophisticated application of diminishing scale to appear far taller than its physical height of 189 feet. To achieve this effect, Imagineers reduce the size of architectural elements, such as windows, battlements, and individual stones as the structure rises. The stones at the base of the castle are full-sized, but everything near the top of the spires is scaled down significantly. This forces the observer's brain to perceive the shrinking details as being a much greater distance, making the castle appear to tower high above the horizon. Imagineers use the reverse of this trick at the American Adventure Pavilion in Epcot to solve a different problem. To maintain historical accuracy, a colonial-style building should only be 2 or 3 stories tall, but the theater inside requires a 5-story structure. By oversizing the windows and doors, Disney tricks your eyes into reading the 5-story show building as a much smaller, historically appropriate 3-story pavilion. Physical orientation. Disney wants you to believe the Magic Kingdom is built on the first floor, but you are actually walking on a roof. Because Florida's high water table prevented digging traditional basements, the 9-acre Utilidor system was built directly at ground level. Imagineers then used 8 million cubic yards of earth dredged from the Seven Seas Lagoon to bury the tunnels, effectively raising the guest areas to the 2nd and 3rd story levels. Main Street slopes at a gradual incline, but it's designed so subtly that your body never registers the elevation change. This lift allows Disney to keep the mess of reality, trash removal via pneumatic tubes, food deliveries, and cast member movement physically separated and entirely invisible. You are standing in the middle of a bustling city, but the infrastructure is running 15 feet beneath your feet. The one place that I can actually feel the gradual incline, because it's not as gradual, it's kind of abrupt, is coming from any of the forms of transportation and walking up to the tap styles. That is a little bit of a hike. I know what you're thinking. What about sightlines? Said no one. In Disney World, trees, berms, and dense landscaping are not just decorative choices. They are a visual fortress designed to block the outside world from your view. There's one major exception to this rule in Magic Kingdom, and that's the Contemporary Resort, which is clearly visible from some parts of Tomorrowland. This was a deliberate choice because both the resort and the land were designed in the late 1960s to represent the same modern aesthetic. Because they share a visual language of clean lines and the resort has the monorail integration, seeing the hotel doesn't break the illusion, it reinforced it. And the placement of the Contemporary Resort behind Tomorrowland was not an accident. They actually specifically placed Contemporary Resort right there once they knew exactly where Tomorrowland would be. It's pretty cool. And actual magic tricks. In the Haunted Mansion, the ghosts are created using a 160-year-old illusion called Pepper's Ghost. This effect uses a large pane of glass angled at 45 degrees between the guest and the scene. Real figures and props are located in what is called blue rooms below or beside the track. When these figures are lit, their reflections appear on the glass. Because your brain reads the reflection as occupying the same physical space as the physical set behind the glass, the ghosts appear solid and three-dimensional. Star Wars Rise of the Resistance uses spatial illusions to hide the fact that you are moving between multiple buildings. The transport ship you enter early in the attraction does not actually travel. Instead, it sits on a massive rotating turntable. While you watch screens, the cabin rotates so that when you exit through the same door you entered, you're facing the entrance of an entirely different building. Inside the cockpit of that ship, a mirror is used to create depth in a physically shallow space. by placing the consoles on the floor and using a 45-degree mirror to reflect them upright. Imagineers trick your brain into seeing a full-depth room. The AT-AT hanger uses a similar trick, where a massive mirror on the far wall reflects 2 real walkers to make the hanger appear twice its actual size. Well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Disney World really is built on magic. If you made it to the end, go ahead and drop this password in the comments below. And while you're down there, go ahead and hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be one of the first to know when myself or one of my friends comes out with a brand new video, something we do all week. Why? Because we're serious about fun. See you next time.